Welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Greg Borgon, president and founder of Heart of a Warrior Ministries. Today I will address a timely topic, the importance of margin. In James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17, we read, "Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we'll live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag. All such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins." Many of us are living hectic lives with little or no time to accommodate unexpected requests for our attention or engagement or address the things that are important but are not critical. There is no margin for such things. We're already at our maximum, or so we think. We bristle at any new demand made upon us. We become irritated at the audacity of anyone making such a request. Don't they understand I'm at my limit? We're living a herniated disc experience where any petition for our time is experienced as pain. One of the more painful ailments is a herniated disc. When someone has a herniated disc, pain can be felt wherever the body is touched. So the idea is that when we're living in such a hectic lifestyle where we have no margin in our life, it's like living with a herniated disc. Any request is felt as pain rather than opportunity. So many of us live in a chronic state of busyness with little time for spontaneity or space to enjoy the abundant life promised in Scripture. In effect, we experience a herniated disc experience where any additional responsibility, any obligation, any commitment for that matter, any expectation placed on us or requirement laid upon us is felt as added pain. We know when we are living a herniated existence when a simple request or an unplanned or unexpected event pushes us over the edge. Our response is out of proportion to the circumstance. We become irritated or lash out at the request, feeling the pain of not having the space in our busy lives to respond. We resent the intrusion and we let others know we resent it. For instance, our spouse asks us to take care of something that wasn't on the list of things we planned to do. Our son or daughter asks us to spend some time with them when we had hoped to rest after a particularly stressful day. Our pastor calls us and asks us to take on a new role or task that we know will demand time we don't have. Our small group requires our presence every other week for 2 hours, and it's felt as yet another commitment we don't have time for given our busy schedule. Or our boss asks us to take on an additional responsibility that is not in our job description. We just can't seem to get the things we enjoy the most, can get to the things we enjoy the most, or that breathes life into our harried existence. We feel like the world is pushing in on us with demands we feel we can't meet. We resent the intrusion. There is no time for these things, no room in our lives, no space to accommodate one more thing. Every new demand is viewed larger than it really is in reality. Dr. Richard Swenson defines margin in his book of the same title as the distance or space between our load and our limits. Now, our limits include things like available time, innate or acquired ability, our capacity, intellect, our emotional stability at the time, our stress level, our stage of life, our physical health, and our personality temperament. Those are all of our limits. Our load is represented by our current responsibilities, the obligations that we have, commitments we've made, life circumstances that cascade in on us, requirements laid upon us, pledges we've made, promises we have to keep, duties we have to fulfill, burdens we carry, and liabilities we're saddled with. When there is no margin in our lives, our load overwhelms our limits and we're living a herniated life. Margin is that free space that can be accessed to accommodate the unexpected, the things we love to do but aren't critical, the stuff we want to do but rarely have the time to do, the opportunities we would love to engage, and the reasonable expectations of others that improve relationships. So how do we create margin in our lives? How do we make room in an already demanding schedule? How do we generate space for the unexpected? It's been said that nature deplores a vacuum. In other words, when a vacuum exists, things cascade in to fill it. When margin exists in our lives, we need to resist the temptation to fill it immediately with something we haven't had room for up until that time. Margin is free space for worthwhile activities of a temporary nature that will not take up permanent residence, thereby diminishing our ability for any future opportunity. We need to be judicious on when, why, where, what, and how we temporarily use up this valuable space. First things first, though. How do we create margin in our lives? There's no shortcut. Margin can only be created by elimination of something we are already doing. Eliminating behaviors to make room for margin takes discipline, takes commitment and courage. Some habits are difficult to change and will take time. The first thing to go is any dysfunctional activity that robs us of our precious time. So we need to ask ourselves these questions. What behaviors are we engaged in that are time wasters, unhealthy, corrupting, or sinful, that steal what little discretionary time we have available? What habits have we nurtured that need to be reined in? What hobbies do we have that time expended doing them that are beyond reasonable limits? What activities are we engaged in that are not healthy or that are out of control? The second thing to go are those things that are unhealthy and impair our physical health, interfere with getting the sleep we need, prevent us from enjoying periods of rest and relaxation, that things that hinder us from establishing and sustaining meaningful relationships and friendships, and things that thwart our spiritual development and maturation. As a side note, I find it ironic that we always seem to find time for things we really want to do, even when those things are not good for us. So the final thing to go is the notion that our jobs are our identity, or the place where we're to derive our value. It's not what you do that determines who you are. It's who you are in Christ that should inform, condition, and qualify what you do. Your job is the gift God gives you to provide for your needs and have some left over to give to the needy. Workaholism is a dysfunctional pattern that sucks up what little margin we have, let alone prevents us from other things that really matter. Second, what will help us create margin in our lives? What will help us to determine what should be eliminated to produce margin in our lives? What will inform the tough decisions we might have to make to create margin in our lives? Answer to these important life-changing questions begin with prayer, self-reflection, honest evaluation, guidance from respected mentors, and a heartfelt assessment. This personal appraisal must be informed and conditioned by some respected authority that will bring cohesion, consistency, coherence, and congruence to our lives. From my point of view, I believe that authority is God and His Word, the Bible. Two filters will help us determine what to eliminate in our life so that margin is created. Filter one is the personal appraisal framework. In a previous video podcast, I addressed the importance of determining what hills to die on, what hills to bleed on, and what hills not to climb at all. Personal conclusions about these issues will help us gain clarity regarding what should be eliminated to produce margin in our lives. I'd encourage you to view that video podcast entitled Hills to Die On, which was podcast number 11 on my Facebook page. I'd like to focus our attention on filter number 2, personal life mandate. One other worthwhile activity will help us determine what to eliminate in our lives to create margin. That activity is to discover our God-given and ordained trajectory, which will clarify our unique journey and destiny. You see, we were brought into this world by God's sovereign initiative and design. When God superintended our formation in our mother's womb, He knew us before we ever were. He set the number of days we'd live on this earth. We are here to fulfill His divine purpose. He determined in advance for us, for each of us, uniquely. Ephesians 2:10. So in other words, before we ever came to be, He determined a purpose that would give purpose to our life, as well as facilitate His redemptive purposes in a fallen world. When we have clarity regarding our personal life mandate, our calling, we will have the confidence we need to say no to some things and yes to others. Our personal life mandate consists of, first of all, our biblical purpose, our beingness, which provides the energy we need, the fuel that will propel us forward and give us the capacity we need to complete or even just engage our life purpose. The second element of a personal life mandate is our life purpose, our doingness for others, which provides the path where to travel. The third component of a personal life mandate is our committed passion. The people group we're called to serve, or the cause we're called to embrace, or a combination of the both, which brings focus to our life. Then there's the next component, our non-negotiables in any role we assume. Those things that must be present in any situation in order for us to thrive and to fulfill our life purpose. They're the boundaries we set that we won't cross. The next component is our unique methodologies. It's our toolkit that helps us effectively do what we're called to do, the resources that our personal resources that we bring to bear on every initiative we engaged in. Your spiritual gifts, your natural abilities, your acquired skill, your personality temperament, your leadership style, your core values, your axiomatic principles that you've learned over time. When you exercise them, God shows up. And finally, there's our ultimate contributions, the legacy we leave when God calls us home. So if we have clarity about Eden and filter 1, the hills we're to die on, the hills we are called to bleed on, the hills we're not to climb at all, and we have clarity about our personal life mandate, our biblical purpose, our life purpose, our committed passion, our non-negotiables in any role we assume, our toolkit, our unique methodologies, our wiring is what that is all about. And finally, the ultimate contributions that we're going to make, the legacy we're going to leave. When we have clarity about those things, then it becomes readily apparent what should be eliminated to create margin in our life so that we can embrace whatever opportunity God sends our way. So in summary, margin is needed in our lives to accommodate unexpected or unplanned requests for our time that matter, that are important, that correlates with our calling, and that reflects God's priorities. Margin can only be produced by elimination of things that are not really necessary, things that are sinful or dysfunctional or unhealthy, things that are not hills to die on or bleed on, and things that are not in accordance with our personal life mandate. If you'd like a text of today's podcast, please submit your request via Heart of a Warrior Ministries at AOL.com. That's HOAW Ministries at AOL.com. So I hope that this podcast will help you create margin in your life and underscores the importance of having margin in your life, that space between our limits and our load. Well, that's all I have for you today. May God richly bless you until we meet again.